right, here we are, back to answer more of your TV questions. Let's just dive right in. If Beth doesn't show up in season 2, Daryl Dixon, I'm out. I can't deal with this constant back and forth of whether or not they're bringing her back. How long do they honestly think we should wait? It's been a decade. This is ridiculous. It makes me sad. Can't they give us something big to keep us from giving up? Yeah, I mean, I really do think that we'll see her in season 2. I understand. I mean, it's rough waiting. I kind of think that's what they gave us at the con, was something really big that she was saying, to give us some hope, you know. But yeah, I mean, I get it, but I really do think we'll see her in season 2. I don't know. They would have to do something pretty big that makes it really, really super obvious that she's not coming back in order for me to give up. And I can't even, like, imagine what that would be. So I'm still hoping, but like I said, I really do think we'll see her in season 2. So hang in there just a little longer. It's coming, only a few months away. All right, Beth is coming soon. I was rewatching 5-9 because I remembered a scene where we see a character through a glass that has a bullet hole in it, pick one, and I wanted to remember the context because I've always thought this was Beth's POV, so we see this scene a couple of times in the episode, in the first 2 minutes and during Tyrese's hallucinations, but what seems to confirm it is Beth's POV is that this scene appears right after the zoom on Beth's face, pick 2. The placement of the bullet hole matches the bullet wound on Beth's forehead. I think they used it to show that this is Beth's POV with the bullet hole on the left side. It's probably from the missing 17 days. Maybe Beth started to wake up and that's what she saw, but probably lost consciousness again since the music box played only 3 weeks after. Sorry if this has already been talked about. No, I mean, it hasn't been talked about in a long time. I always wonder, you can actually kind of see Glenn right here on the left of the picture. And I always thought maybe this was them digging her grave, which means that, yeah, it could totally be her point of view. But I mean, even if it's not her actually being aware of what's going on, I do think you are 100% right. I mean, when people create films and TV shows, they do that. They very often will say something or suggest something and then cut to something else that kind of proves it. I'm trying to think of an example, and I'm not going to be able to think of an example. But like you could have a woman saying, oh, who am I going to marry anyway? Who am I going to fall in love with? And then it cuts to a scene that has the guy in it that's going to be her love interest. I mean, they do that all the time in film, right? And so I think you're right that the fact that we see this right after we see the bullet, or we see a picture of her with the blood high on her forehead, which was talked about before too, the kind of changing placement of her wound. I think it is very much trying to associate those two for us and say that everything we saw, it was so abstract in that episode. It was really a beautiful episode, but it's really hard based on what we have and what we know is concrete to actually understand what they're trying to show us there, because there's so many scenes that are very abstract that don't actually have a place in what's going on in the plot of the episode. So yeah, I think you're 100% right about this. Whether it's her point of view, whether she was conscious or not, we just simply don't know, and we won't know until they give us the missing 17 days. But I do completely agree with what you're saying, and that they were trying to associate those two things, which shows us that there was stuff going on that we haven't seen yet. Because whatever they're doing in this part, like I said, whether she's awake or not, this is something that happened during the missing 17 days, and they're alluding to it without actually showing us what it is. And they do that constantly, all throughout 509. They do that. So yeah, very interesting. Thanks for pointing that out. Some of that has been talked about way far in the past. 509 was just, we kind of beat it to death. We analyzed it to death. And I really should do it again because we've learned so much since, the last time that I analyzed it. But yeah, it's definitely super interesting. And I think once she does return, we'll go back to Coda and 509 and 510 and realize how much foreshadowing was in those episodes. Probably even more than we've picked up on. I just think there's tons. Next one. Adding to my previous ask, sorry. I think the character we see through the glass is Glenn. I agree. It looks like he wears his red burgundy shirt from Coda, and we can also see the strap from his rifle. The scene is very short, but it looks like he is looking down and he's moving a bit, just like when he comforted Maggie at the end of Coda. Maybe Beth had some consciousness right after getting shot. Yeah, that would be super interesting. I'm going to go back and look at it here. You can actually, I think you can see the rifle a little bit better in the other picture. But yeah, I do agree that it's Glenn. and we don't know what he's doing. I would have almost thought this was, like I said before, more him, I don't know, helping dig her grave or something, but it is interesting that this could actually be right after Beth was shot. And like I said, it may or may not be her point of view. They might also just be symbolically trying to tell us that there's more going on here, that when we think she's dead, she's actually alive, that sort of thing. And so I don't have a whole lot more to say other than I agree. This is super interesting, and it's super weird, and it's yet another thing that's never actually been explained. So thanks for pointing that out. This one. I don't know if you've already seen this card, but they basically confirm that Maggie freaked out because the walker made her think of Beth, and obviously they see blonde walkers all the time, and the only thing that freaks her out is because she's in the trunk of a car. Yeah, for sure. I don't know if I've seen this card in particular, but it's been confirmed several times. Who died, I'm just reading the card, and was left bound and gagged. Seeing her struggle emotionally with the gruesome discovery, Glenn comes to help, and once he realizes that the kidnapped walker is a painful reminder to his wife of her now dead sister, he kills the walker for her. So a couple of other things. I would encourage you guys to go watch this particular scene in the episode, because it doesn't always register the first time. I know that I had to watch it 5 or 10 times before what was going on in the scene actually registered with me. And then Gladriel Jones just recently told me that she rewatched this and it registered with her for the first time. And it just is like your mind kind of skips over it. And I don't know if they do that on purpose or if they're, I don't know, putting subliminal messages in so that we're not quite focusing on what's going on here. But when they first watch everybody's reaction, when they first approach this gaggle of cars, right? There's a big pile up of cars, and of course they go in and search for supplies, but everybody kind of freaks out when they see it. Like, everybody does. They all stop, they freeze, they look at each other. It's like there's these really significant looks going on, and you don't know why. I mean, Rick does it, Carl does it, they all do it. And Daryl really freaks out and leaves and goes into the woods. He goes, I'm gonna go look for water. And that's when one of the times that Carol says, I'll go with you, and that time he actually says no, and he's very, very firm about it. He goes, no, I'll go by myself. And then he practically sprints into the woods. He is not going to have anything to do with these cars. And it just doesn't quite register sometimes when you're watching it that they all really freaked out about this. So whatever the reason is, it has something to do with the missing 17 days. And the fact that they saw all these cars really freaked them out. Now, even based on what we've theorized about Beth and the missing 17 days, it doesn't really account for their reactions here, okay? We think that they were trying to bury her in a church, and walkers came through, and they had to leave her behind in a car because they were running. And of course, we believe they went back to get her once the herd had passed through so that they could finish burying her, and she was gone. But what does that have to do with a bunch of cars that are crashed together on a road? I mean, it doesn't. But what it does bring to mind for me is that in the original spoilers about the missing 17 days, so the white cabin that Emily was seen going into and everything, there was something added where it said that there was a big car chase, and they said that it took place over near where they were filming for Terminus, and we don't really know if that means it had something to do with Terminus, or they just, the show happened to be filming in the same place, but it'll have nothing to do with Terminus in the show. We don't really know. But we didn't see that either. There was no high-speed car chases. I want to say it might have been at night, and most of the major players were seen there. Like, Rick was seen there, Maggie was seen there, Glenn was seen there. And then we have the whole open the door thing that Stephen Yun posted and then took down, which was the cabin from the inside in the dark. So all I'm saying is there's a lot we still don't know. Even though we've theorized the basics of what happened with Beth, I think there's a lot of stuff that we really don't have a whole lot of idea about. And something about these cars way freaked everybody out. I mean, way more than just Maggie. Of course, Maggie freaks out when she sees somebody in the trunk, and of course it's related to Beth. And Lauren Cohen, I think, confirmed that, and Shaniqua Martin Green confirmed that. So, yeah, but there's so much more going on here than they've actually told us or actually showed us. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, clearly this walker was meant to call back to Beth, but it's also really interesting that she's tied up, because they didn't have to do that. They could have just put the walker in the trunk, but they really, really focused on the fact that she is a prisoner, that she was kidnapped, that she was bound up with, like, handcuffs. And you could relate that to Beth at Grady, that she was taken there and was not allowed to leave. But at the same time, I don't think this was meant to be a callback so much as it was meant to be a foreshadow, which almost makes it feel like, you know, we've wondered exactly what happened when Beth woke up. Like, did she wake up and wander away, or did somebody come and get her and take her back to Grady? This makes it seem like she was actually taken, like she was actually kidnapped and someone came and took her. And does the group know that? Probably not. But this was a big hint at it. So yeah, I could go on and on. Obviously, I kind of did go on and on about this. This was a huge clue. And if it's not about Beth returning and it's not about her being alive, it makes absolutely no sense and should not have been in the show, because they've never explained it any other way. They've never connected it to anything. There just would have been no reason for it. And we all know that Gimple does not put anything in the show for no reason. I always circle back around to the fact that he brought Morales back to kill him 8 seasons after the guy disappeared, and he was not even a main character. Like, nobody would have expected him to come back. Nobody would have cared if that particular thread was left dangling, but Gimple does not leave loose threads. So either Beth is coming back, or at the very least, this has still got to connect to something in the future, and he's got to explain it somehow, and he will. So until it is explained, I continue to believe that it has everything to do with Beth's return. So anyway, I have no idea if that answered your question. I just rambled on for a long time about that, but hopefully it did. All right. About the placement of Beth's wound, I'm kind of confused too, because in the pictures from the filming of Coda, where we see Emily with Lauren and the crew, she has blood on her forehead, but no wound. So either they didn't put a wound prosthetic, because when Daryl carries her, she's far from the camera, so just blood is enough, or they removed it when the pictures were taken. But that would be weird, since she has her other scars. But the thing is that there isn't blood on the exact spot where the bullet really hit. So I was wondering, maybe they'd choose to put the wound higher when they did the special effects, because it would be more survivable that way. And maybe they filmed Tyrese's hallucinations before they edited Beth's death scene that could explain the misplacement of the wound. Maybe, you know, if that could be a possibility, or if 509 was filmed way after they edited Coda. I don't know what order that they filmed in. I couldn't tell you that. But what I will say is that I don't know that she ever actually had a wound prosthetic. I don't know for sure. This is me conjecturing, but I kind of think that her getting shot might have been all CGI, which means they would have put some blood to show the wound bleeding, but the actual, you know, her getting shot and the wound, or the bullet coming kind of out of the back of her head, I think that was all done with a computer. So that could be why she doesn't actually have a wound prosthetic. And yeah, I mean, it definitely could be that they just didn't need one when Daryl was carrying her out. But it's still interesting to think about that. I feel like it's a little bit suspicious, because they almost go out of their way to make it suspicious, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't know. I almost feel like, on the one hand, if they really wanted us to believe she was dead, they would have put the wound prosthetic there specifically for the pictures or something. You know what I mean? So that we really wouldn't know. And I feel like they almost left things open and dangling, and maybe even moved the wound placement a little bit on purpose as a hint for us. Like, oh, maybe you guys should pick up on the fact that this is not being very consistent about where this, I don't know. I think it could go either way. So yeah, it's possible. And I don't know, I wouldn't really chalk it up to the editing though, because I just feel like Gimple always had this planned. And as I always say, there have been times when they have made editing mistakes in the show and they come right out and tell us. The biggest one is in Consumed, when the van fell wrong, like it was falling straight down and then it landed on all 4 wheels, and that just completely defies the laws of physics. But they came out after that and told us that they knew it was wrong, and they knew it wasn't possible for it to land that way, but they only had so many vans and so much time that they could crash, and they just had to do it that way for time and for budget. You know what I mean? So when they have things like that, they come right out and tell us, which is exactly why it's super, super suspicious that they never came and explained how Dawn shot Beth when her gun was still holstered at that point, right? She couldn't possibly have shot Beth in the forehead at that angle when her gun was still in its holster. And you would think if that was just an editing error, they would come out and be like, yeah, we know we screwed it up, but we just kind of had to do it that way because of X, Y, and Z, you know, logistics will kill you and all that. But they didn't. They left it, and they almost like they want us to believe it or they want us to question it. So I wouldn't think that it would probably be the editing, because they planned too carefully for that. You know what I mean? Even if it was edited before or after, they could have fixed it so that it all lined up, and they very specifically didn't. So yeah, I hope that answers your question as much as I possibly can answer it. But yeah, I think we're going to stop there for today. I'm almost at 15 minutes, and so far I have enough to do one more video, so I'll probably do it in a couple of days near the end of the week. Everyone have a wonderful week, and I'll be back soon.